Hello again, friends. Happy spring break to all of you. Or just happy Tuesday if you're not in college. I had to do another follow-up podcast on the Ukrainian situation since so many of you have asked me after my three-parter last week on the Ukrainian unraveling that you said, hey, what's going on? Boyer, what's up with Vladimir Putin taking over the Crimean Peninsula and stuff? Well, it has been a busy week, my friends. I'll try to keep this brief, but I rarely do. There are several things afoot that are going to impact the permanent future of Ukraine, of Crimea, of Russia, and of the whole concept of sovereignty. And I'm even going to throw in a geographical historical term for you to know called Sudetenland. What? And we'll shout out to Nazis too, because everybody's calling everybody Nazis in this whole situation. Okay, I just threw a whole bunch of stuff at you. Let me unpack it. First off, what's going on? Well, today is Tuesday, March 11th, and it's a day that will live in infamy for sovereignty. Okay, wait a minute. I'm getting a little ahead of myself. That's going to be March 17th. Why March 17th? Well, if you haven't been following events, since the Ukrainian unraveling, that lots of folks who were ethnically Russian, or just like Russia, in the eastern and southern parts of the country, namely the Crimean Peninsula, have been troubled by the takeover of the central government by pro-Western forces. And indeed, this has all come to a head in the Crimean Peninsula because 60 or 65% of them are literally ethnically Russian. They would claim ethnic Russian citizenry or speak Russian, and there's a gigantic Russian naval base there. So overwhelmingly in this particular sub-state of Ukraine, they have said, oh, we're terrified. We're terrified of the pro-Western Ukrainians who are taking over this country illegally, who are going to come kill us all. And under this rubric that the pro-EU, pro-Western Ukrainians who overthrew Viktor Yanukovych are so anti-Russian, and they want to kill all the Russians, that they're going to kill all the Russians to maintain the territorial integrity of Ukraine. Under that rubric, Vladimir Putin has moved in hundreds or thousands or 10,000 Russian troops, which, by the way, VTW have torn off all the insignia on all their clothes, all their camos, so there's no Russian flag, there's not even symbols of rank or anything. Why would the Russians do that? Because they're being exceptionally savvy, as they are prone to do in this part of the world. And while they have been building up military in the Crimean Peninsula, and the whole world's been like, dude, Russia, can you stop sending in all those troops? Russia says, what are you talking about? They're not our troops. We don't know who those 10,000 guys are with guns. This is like throwback to the Trojan War, like the Trojan horse full of soldiers sent in. So anyway, I'm here to tell you, if you didn't know this already, Crimea is gone. Crimea is now controlled by Russia. Crimea will be reverting to Russian territory. Yeah, you heard it here first. You know me, I'm always going to tell you the truth. It's already gone. And by the way, I think that negotiators like Secretary of State John Kerry and Vladimir Putin and the Foreign Minister Lavrov of Russia, I think they all already recognize this. That, nope, Russia's going to get it back. How so? Well, they physically, militarily control it. What can Ukraine or the EU or the US do to physically take over control of Crimea? Nothing. They can't. Sorry, I know there's lots of people in the United States who love wars and they want to go start a war. But this is a war with Russia you'd be starting. And so do you want a nuclear war? Do you want World War III? The only way to stop Russia from possessing, literally possessing the Crimean Peninsula is starting World War III, in which case there will be no Crimean Peninsula left to own. The Russians are itching for a fight, quite frankly, right now. So if you want to fight, they're going to go all the way, and all the way is a nuclear war. The United States, I don't think, really wants a nuclear option to save a part of the world that we have no presence in and no geopolitical interest. Besides, we like democracy. Okay, so the Russians own it. It's theirs. And what happened last Friday, I believe, I think that was March 7th, is the Crimean Parliament, because, again, Crimea is kind of a sub-state of Ukraine, like Virginia or California is a sub-state of the United States, so they have their own state legislature, let's call it. The Crimean state legislature voted not really for independence, because they didn't have the right to do that. They're just elected officials. But they voted to have a referendum in their country. If you don't know what a referendum is, that's when you put a vote to the people. And you say, here's what we want to happen. We're going to let the people decide the fate of Crimea. How very democratic. Isn't that very democratic? That's very democratic. Letting the people decide. Here is the referendum as it sits. And by the way, they have an accelerated program here, so 10 days. So I believe that the vote's going to be on March 17th. Ah, St. Paddy's Day, luck of the Irish means Crimea goes back to Russia. So the referendum put forward is two options. Two options for you 60 to 65% pro-Russian people. You see where I'm going with this. Here, you get to vote. 60 to 65% of you who want to be part of Russia. You get to vote. One, we immediately reunify with Russia. And they're using the term reunify, as if this whole thing of them being in the Ukraine was a big mistake. And that they originally and are supposed to be part of Russia. So vote one for immediate reunification of being part of Russia. Vote two if you want to revert to the 1992 Constitution of Ukraine, which allows the Ukrainian parliament to vote to reunify with Russia. So let me summarize this for you. Vote one to rejoin Russia now. Vote two to rejoin Russia later. There's no third option. So Crimea and the whole peninsula is fortified beyond belief with thousands and thousands and tens of thousands, if you count the big base at Sevastopol, of Russian military. Now with AK-47s and tanks and snipers and jets flying over. This is done. This is done. I'm sorry to the non-Russian people of Crimean Peninsula, particularly the Tatars, but there is no going back. There is nothing anybody can do. What is going on here is, as I was suggesting, Crimea is now being played as a chip. They're not going to tell the world press this, but behind closed doors, what is going on is the negotiators are saying to Russia, okay, we give up. You got Crimea. But how about this? We give you Crimea without fussing, so you won't invade the rest of eastern Ukraine that also has a whole bunch of Russian people in it. That's the negotiation that's happening right now, my friends. And that's going to be a tough one, because Russia is rewriting the rules of sovereignty here. And it's important. In fact, I would say Russia's putting the last nail in the coffin of the modern concept of sovereignty. The modern concept being that we all got together at the United Nations post-World War II, and we all recognized each other's borders, and we recognize that border, and you recognize my border, and that's the way we have states, recognition. Russia has pretty much said, we're not even pretending anymore. We just don't care. We Russians think that sovereignty is protecting people like you. That there are peoples in places, and that we maybe should redraw all the lines to where Russian peoples are. That's the old school definition of sovereignty, by the way. That's 1,000 years ago, sovereignty. And this is sovereignty. This is the old school definition of sovereignty that people like Hitler liked as well. Uh-oh, I've done it. I lowballed. I pulled in the Nazi reference, because usually you never do that, because alluding to Nazis in a debate is always like a last resort done by dumb people. But in this case, everybody's calling everybody Nazis, and some of it's kind of semi-appropriate. Namely, I'll talk about why both sides are calling each other fascist Nazis at this point. I'll start with the Western side. It was actually Hillary Clinton, former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton, who I love, who likened Vladimir Putin's moves of going into Ukraine to protect Russian people. And by the way, that's what they're saying. They're not saying we want Crimea. They're saying we have to go protect Russian people or they're all going to die. The crazy Ukrainians are going to kill every Russian person, so we have to protect them. They truly believe that in their hearts, by the way. Truly do. Vladimir Putin truly believes that. He is looked upon as a savior. He is a demigod savior now. He's going to save Russian people. So Hillary Clinton is looking at this in the Western perspective, including my own, and it's like, oh, dude, you're going old school there. And that's what the Nazis did. That's what Hitler did. He did this thing, and this is a term we now call Sudetenland. Sudetenland, I think it's named after the Sudetes Mountains in Western Czechoslovakia, or Western Czech Republic. And what Hitler did back in the day is he said, hey, all these borders have been moving around since the crash of the Austro-Hungarian Empire and the Germanic Empire, and so borders keep moving around, but people are all over the place who are our people. And Sudetenland refers to German-speaking people in these Sudetes mountains that was in western Czechoslovakia at the time. And there was also German people in western Poland, and there was German-speaking people in Austria. So Hitler, in a move, and again, I'm not calling Vladimir Putin a Nazi, but I'm saying this is what Hitler did, and this is what Putin's doing. And Hitler said, hey, here's the deal. I'm paraphrasing Hitler. He said, here's the deal, we never really respected any of these lines, and those are German-speaking people over there, and they're getting picked on. In fact, during World War I, a whole bunch of those Sudetenland people got massacred during the war because no one was there to protect them, and they're German people. We need to get in there and get our German people back so we can protect our German people, and that was actually the launch of World War II. Hitler's first move wasn't, oh, we're going to go take over Paris. His first move was, well, we got to take over Western Poland and Czechoslovakia because we're just getting our people back. That's why all the Allies hesitated so long. They're like, we should do, but he already took it. And lo and behold, how many parallels are you seeing here with Russia now reasserting the same Sudetenland principle of we got to go protect these people or they're going to get killed. Our people, by the way, who happen to be in another state. The question becomes when will that end? But let me wrap up this quick podcast with that. Why would the Russians be calling other people Nazis? The Russian people, the Russians in Crimean Peninsula, and probably, I don't know, 60, 70, 90% of Russians in Russia view the entire Ukrainian revolution and the unraveling that's been happening for the last 3 months. Well, first off, they blame the United States and the EU completely. They say, nope, everybody was happy there, and then the EU and the United States came in and ruined everything. And they got all these rebel-rousers and fascists and Nazis to illegally overthrow a democracy. Which, yeah, you can make that argument. That as bad of a leader as he was, Viktor Yanukovych was elected to office by a majority. And a small group of people threw him out and are taking over the country. And that's why the Russian attitude, both within Russia and the Russian attitude within Crimea and eastern Ukraine, the Russian attitude is, this is an illegal takeover, it's not legitimate, and it's a small band of people who have now absorbed all power, and they're going to kill everybody that ain't them. They're going to come kill all the Russians, they're going to kill all of us, just like the Nazis. So, by the way, I'm not pulling out the Nazi reference. I'm explaining to you why both sides of this are pulling out the Nazi reference at each other, and you can make logical arguments for why they're doing it. I do want to add in this. Make no bones about it, my friends. You're not going to read about this anywhere, I don't think. But there is overwhelming support in Mother Russia for Putin to be doing this. There's overwhelming support in Russia for them to reabsorb these Russian people. And it is absolutely borderline fanatical nationalism is starting to take root in Russia. And what fanatical nationalism is, our country's the greatest and we can do anything we want. And yes, we should do this. We're the heroes here. They're Nazis over there. We're the heroes. We're the ones who are going to come in and save the day. They're bad. We're good. Russia's good. Russia's good. And it's like, whoa, whoa, whoa. And the reason I say that is I don't like to make fun of kind of the countries or governments or peoples. And I'm trying to keep a balanced approach here. But I read international news, and I read a lot of Russian newspapers, and they are now terrible. There isn't any balanced opinion pieces. There's not anything in virtually any Russian news source. Every single newspaper after newspaper, story after story is, we're the good guys, and the whole world's trying to kill us. Vladimir Putin's going to save us. The U.S. is to blame for everything. The U.S. is to blame for everything. The U.S. is to blame for everything. And it's no wonder that the mass of people in Russia are like, yes, everything is the U.S.'/West's fault. All of it. And now it's spiraled out of control that I think most people in Russia believe that every single one of Russia's problems is the United States' fault. That we lost in the Cold War and it's all their fault because they won, and they converted us to a capitalist system and it was terrible and it was very unstable and it's all their fault, and crime is terrible here somehow because of the United States, and Ukraine was fine before the U.S. did all this. I mean, and most people truly believe that. I mean, if the newspapers are reflecting that and popular opinion on the street is supporting Vladimir Putin in the 65 to 75% approval rating, then Russians think that all of their woes, and their economy sucks right now, by the way, and to me, I try to be positive, but I don't see Russia going anywhere but downhill economically for a while. And all of that is somebody else's fault too. And that's a dangerous game to be playing, because what it does is it victimizes yourself, it victimizes your whole country, and says, we can't be to blame for anything. We, the government, have done nothing wrong. It's all these outsiders, and you see where that's rallying the nationalist forces and getting people all fired up to back the government up, and it's not our fault that we suck, it's someone else's fault. And therefore, what do? You don't do anything because it's somebody else's fault. I think the Russian leadership is getting dangerous here, dangerously disconnected from reality. Which is fine, it's their country, but I don't see how berating and bedeviling the United States is going to fix your economy. And pissing off all your neighbors, or at least making them scared that you're going to take over all areas with Russian people in it, that ain't going to help you economically either. That ain't helping you make friends in the hood. So the Russians have a whole lot of reasons to be aggravated at the United States. The United States has pushed for the growth of the EU, mostly for economic reasons, and to get Eastern Europe on our team. The United States has pushed hard for NATO to expand, and that's what really pisses off the Russians the most. But to take that and then spin it into every single thing that's ever gone wrong with Russia is somebody else's fault is like, not a lot of accountability there, guys. It gives you no impetus to ever fix your own stuff because you are claiming that it's not your fault and you can't do anything about it. Anyway, wild nationalism is pervading Russian society right now. They are going to win the Ukraine, and I guess that'll be a big point of pride for them, I guess. It just occurred to me, maybe this is just a giant ploy to reverse the demographic trend in Russia. I just made that up. For those of you that have taken my class, you know that Russia's population is actually declining. So people have like their fertility rate's like 0.9. No one has children in Russia, so their population gets smaller every year. So maybe this ploy to go get other Russians is just a way to rebuild the population. Oh, I got the catchphrase. If you can't make it, take it. If you can't make babies, go take babies. Oh, wow. Somebody should really make a bumper sticker out of that. Anyway, the wrap up here is Crimea is gone. It is Russian territory for all practical purposes, and it probably will be legally soon, at least in Russian eyes. The world will not recognize it, but Russia don't care. A side note, China's not happy about this. China is a big fan of the concept of sovereignty, and so Russia is actually starting to jeopardize its relationship with China. Not that much, but China's not going to be happy about the events. Remember, Russia's already done this in Georgia too, so this is now an ongoing trend of, well, we're going to go save the Russian people and pull them into territories that are now ours. That's the old school imperial ambition phase of countries that no one does that anymore. So that's why everybody in the hood's kind of like, okay, are you like guys partying like it's $14.99 here? Because no one does this anymore. Russia does. So the long-term victim of all this is, well, the state of Ukraine and the non-Russian people in Crimean Peninsula. But the big victim here is sovereignty, because now it's really up for grabs, and we're going to start all over again. What can the West do? What can the U.S. do? Nothing. Unless they want to start World War III, not much. The Europeans, by the way, there was talk of starting a big embargo against Russia and isolating it economically. And within 2 seconds, Angela Merkel, Chancellor Angela Merkel of Germany came out and said, no. We get most of our energy from Russia, and Russia's a huge trading partner with us. So no, we're not doing anything economically to Russia. And pretty much all the other European countries are like, oh yeah, we're not doing that either. So, you know, the U.S. is not going to come save the day. The Europeans aren't even going to have economic sanctions. Russia controls the ground here. It's going to be their territory, and the trick now is, how much further will that go? Since Russia does not care about sovereignty at all anymore, not the modern concept, they're going old school, where will it go next? Will they try to now do the same trick in eastern Ukraine? Will they do it in Transnistria? Will they do it in parts of Estonia or Kazakhstan? That is the question, and that will be what we start to follow, I think, in the months and years to come, because nobody can do squat about it right now. Party on.